to Project You, Project Me, removing fear for service leavers, ex-forces, blue light, and perhaps some spouses. What we get questioned on quite a lot is, what are the businesses all about? So we often hear business names and we all understand business names, but sometimes we don't know what actually goes on inside business, what roles are available, how do we get them? So now what we do is we go through our partners and we get it from the horse's mouth. So today we have Rob from NG, Northrop Grumann. Rob, welcome.
Thanks, John. Yeah, great to be part with you on this one.
Yeah, fantastic. And as one of our newer partners and actually a sponsor of our next big event in April, I think it's really relevant and pertinent that you've come on today. But could you, before we start, just tell us a little bit about you, your background, and what your actual job is within NG?
Sure thing. Yeah, so I'm a Queen's Royal Hussar by birth into the army. So but obviously as being an armored guy, worked with the Ats and Dets gang, everywhere we went. So kind of that battle grouping, like team mentality, has always been very close to my heart. And lots of engineers and G6 ninjas got us out some sticky situations. So it's great to sort of evolve through a career of working with lots of different sort of people from different specialist areas. And then I served for about just over 12 years,
Okay.
And then left out the back of subunit command, and then joined NG, or Northrop Grumman, as you said. And the reason I did that is I spent 2 years in UK Space Command before I left, and I got access to Northrop Grumman through operations.
Wow.
And I'll be up front, and if anyone hears Andy Hogg talk about NG, we have 4 values, and those values are something that as a serviceman and serviceman, woman, or other coming forward, they really ring true to the reason why I want to do my job. They help me form part of my identity, kind of, and I truly believe in the mission that NG has, which is to deliver capabilities to keep our sons and daughters and our friends safe on the front line.
Yeah, so a fantastic introduction there, but for a service person who kind of can hear that, what does that actually mean? So when we're looking at Northrop Grumman as a business, what jobs in there, I know there's many, but if you could pick some kind of jobs out that would really suit service people, what are people should they be looking at going into?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, we're a defense and space prime, right? So we're a US company by birth. However,
Okay.
what's really clear is Northrop Grumman UK is a UK sovereign entity. So we work with the UK MOD and wider government on some very sensitive areas. As a result, as you can imagine, the plethora of roles that come with that are huge. And it would be remiss of me to say that you haven't got some other awesome partners in the FTG team like BAE Systems, AWS, to list just 2. But things like, so for example, security. So we've got a couple of ex-RMP guys and girls in the business who have done physical counterintelligence sort of security jobs previously, and they've been able to transfer those over to quite literally physical infrastructure security jobs, as well as information assurance. So that's kind of like a big area. And I know we'll probably talk about it later on in kind of the skills and what qualifications and maybe courses you want to do. We then also have a significant amount of project management, because we are some of the programs or portfolios that we kind of deliver against are some of the biggest the UK Ministry of Defence has, both space, maritime, and air. So project managers, people who might not necessarily have the most program or project management experience, can join as a junior PM. And I'll highlight here, it might seem a bit of a step down for people, experienced soldiers who have done sort of 22 years, have probably been part of Cap and AC sort of career stream. The one thing is joining is there's just an element that we find with a lot of veterans, and I was very lucky because I did a couple of Cap and AC jobs, so I got used to this. It's people will say we need veterans to be more commercially savvy. What that means, it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. However, from a Northrop Grumman perspective, it means that people understand money and the flavors of money and how it behaves and the freedoms and constraints it can give you. And again, without going down that rabbit hole just now, John, I'll flick back to that probably later on when we go into a bit more depth. But then we also have things like business analysts. So we've had quite a few INCOR guys and girls kind of applying to the business. And the business analyst is about consuming a vast amount of data on a program and then making those recommendations. So for me, it was kind of, you the Inc Corps corporals and sergeants who you do the question one brief, right, to the commander, and you're like, this is what I think, this is most likely, most dangerous, this is my recommendation, as the Inc Corps specialist.
Right,
And so the
okay.
business analysts do fee, it's a very similar role. And so that transferable skill is really important. I know Andy Hogg sort of has spoken about it a couple of times, and we'll speak about it at the April event and how people can do that. And as I say, and I know you very kindly put it on the end of on the end of this video. If you head to the Northrop Grumman page, it has the list of jobs, and there's software engineers, system engineers, architects, system architects. Sorry, there is a vast amount out there for people from all over the Army and Navy, Air Force, Marines, and the Civil Service.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is a bit of a trick for people to go and have a look, trying to understand a little bit and trying to dissect it. And that's the purpose of this video, if you like, because people will go onto websites and they'll go and try and have a look at job titles, but they don't actually match what they believe, or they don't really understand it too much. Thus, we need to get more information out, online job fairs, live shows with proper sit-down interviews, which is all the stuff that you're supporting and coming along to do, which is really important because it's great for Northrop Grumman, I'm sure, but it also should be what we want to do for the future. And understanding more and more of this is absolutely where it has to be, because we won't solve the transition unless we do that. And it brings us nicely onto something you just kind of mentioned there. It's the skills and the qualifications. So what would be it's going to be a difficult one for you to answer this, but what would be the kind of stereotypical qualifications to be a project manager? What kind of skills are we looking at for that transferable stuff that comes over that may not be a qual? We could probably go on, but if you could try to break that down in small bite-sized chunks, it'd be great.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we'll lead on project management, right? Because that's what a lot of us
Yeah.
get. We do Prince, we do Agile, we do Scrum,
Yeah.
Insert, generic sort of thing. The important thing about those, right, is from our side, is people understand the lingo. The military has a language that we all understand and we know and love, and we will never forget, like our service numbers, that's just etched and entombed in our minds. However, doing those courses, what I found is it allows you to immediately communicate your intent or your vision, or ask the right questions as an intelligent sort of employee or leader. And so doing those is absolutely critical in learning that sort of transition language. However, behind that is the experience of actually applying it. And I think if I lean on like the REMI trades, for example, the REMI trades do like change management and stuff like that day in, day out, because they're fitting mods to vehicles. They're doing safety cases. They're doing all these things, as are other cat badges, mind. Like, it's unfair of me to just say, the REMI gang, but it's understanding what that actually means and then kind of correlating that across, which, until you've spoken to someone external, and John, I know this is what you and Mandy do kind of day in, day out, to say X equals Y. Having that evidence data behind you as a person is really important now, because it's not veterans necessarily, but we do have people who say they've done stuff which they haven't necessarily. Whereas in the Army, a lot of people, and I'll refer to the Army, but I mean that in the royalist sense of defence, people do have this knowledge and background and experience, but it's having that confidence to say, do you know what? Yeah, I have done change management. It was standing up let's say a battle group comms network. I got all the stakeholders in. I did this. I then plan, refine, execute. The circle that we've all been part of. That's really important, and linking that. And then I think that the other big thing, because I'll just hit on two, John, as you say, because we'll spin bits all day, is that the second one is money. It's so few people in the MOD get access to truly manage money. We've all been part of like ECOF and getting, filling in 25 forms for 25 quid so that we can all go away and, do force development, which is vital for the successful sort of, morale, or so maintaining morale in the Army. But in the commercial world, it's understanding, so in the simplest form, OPEX and CAPEX, so your capital expenditure and your operational expenditures. And in MOD, that's RDEL and CDEL. And in my simple mind, it's real money and not real money. And it's understanding how that money behaves. And I would say to anyone who's thinking about kind of getting out and coming into the commercial world, the Defence Academy, whilst you're in, And if you do cap and act jobs, it's generally pretty good. If you're at DNS, you do requirements management, stuff like that. It's really, really useful experience. If you can go to the Defence Academy, they do the cap and act courses. So they do, I think it's still 4 modules. It talks you through the Army operating model, the Air Force's operating model, the Navy's, and then it talks you through the defence operating model, and then it talks about how the money behaves annually. And if you can understand that commercially, that's really important, because you know when you're doing bids and proposals. So there's just so much sort of latitude in there, John.
Yeah, this is really interesting, and people will find it interesting as well who are, coming into the pathway that we've all been down, clearly why we're here today. I've just picked up 3 things there, and I was just scribbling away. So the first one was the business acronym. One of the things we're bringing in, and we're doing some work with NG at the minute, is the process in which business understands service people. But on the flip side, the consultancy under Andy Moss that we're bringing in is also going to give service leavers a business understanding. So some of the things that you spoke about there to do with money and things like that, we just don't touch. We clearly don't. Very few people in the military will ever have a handle on that. So giving people a look at that profit and loss, things that they're not really used to dealing with, will give them a qualification. So not only on paper, but also qualified in their head to go, actually, I know what you're talking about there. Which then brings us nicely on to change management, because change management, I don't think military people understand what that is, but you outlined what it could be. And there's many different kind of ways that could fall for military people. I think that'll be a good clue for people to go, actually, is that what change management is? So it's really important that you said that. And the third one, sorry, is the Prince 2 and the Scrum. Should I do both? Should I do one? What's your kind of theory on the course thing when we come to that? Because I know they're all slightly, well, they're not slightly different, they're quite different. Would you want someone with all of those quals, or just with Scrum, or just with Prince 2?
So I think, so if I use Northrop Grumman as an example, so our business is split into 2 areas. We've got a cyber intelligence area, now we've got a defense area, and both of those parts of our business behave very, very differently. And that's for very good reason, in that anyone who's been working in defense in cap and act will know about the CAD-MIN cycle. So, and how a capability flows through that, is brought into service, it's then disposed of at the end. Cool, got it.
Yeah.
Or a waterfall. So it's sequential, it's methodical, it happens. That's defense, because we're dealing with programs like I did. So I was very lucky to work with Challenger 3, and that program's a 2040 out of service date. We're talking submarines that will sail for 40 years. That's Prince 2. That's your waterfall kind of getting into it. Don't get me wrong, you can manipulate Prince 2 a little bit to be a bit more agile. However, when we then look at like agile methodology and things like Scrum, and Agile itself, that's much more software based. It was designed around software because it has limited hardware impact. And I'm summarizing a very complex field here. So people who listen, this is not the Bible. It's just how I see it.
You're gonna get hit.
Yeah. But Agile allows that rapid software evolution, and it allows you to fail fast, learn even faster, and just continue that iteration. What I found actually from my experience, so I did both, is it allows we should never be slaves to the framework. We should always understand the framework well enough to make it work for us. And I think, and I by no means am I an expert here. There are people who are far more talented than I. But the great things I saw when I was in the army is people who could be taught a framework, like 7 questions, and then they could manipulate it fairly accurately and legally, and all the stuff that the values of the military teaches you, but they can make it work for them, and as a result, they had more opportunity. And I think from a business perspective, when you extract that, you could be working one day, let's say, on the Queen Elizabeth carriers, which we do some work on, and then the next day, if you're a software engineer, because guess what, carriers need them as well, you could be working on something else, shall we say, and you're changing your methodology. However, you could be working on a problem set that actually the waterfall approach is a little bit better because of how the problem behaves. So in summary, John, to answer your question in a very long way, I think people having awareness of both are really important, but they shouldn't expect having those qualifications allows them to just go into any program. It'll take a little bit of time to sponge in information and understand how agile could apply to Challenger 3, for example,
Yeah.
or vice versa.
Yeah, and this is one of the things we're trying to say to the military specifically is we don't really record anything or really look at these things in the military. We might say we're an agile force. The reality is, though, everybody serving in the military doesn't know what that means.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of information that could be really, really relevant and really important in the future of transition and what people want to do. Because if you miss out all those years inside, let's just say it's a block and this is our service, 4 years, 10 years, 20 years. This information in here, we're not actually adding to in our service. That, for me, is such a vital time where we could be teaching people this, not only to make it better for your transition, but if you understand what agile is, waterfall, or all those kind of things, surely that's a great skill that could
Yeah.
be well used within the military. So actually you get double bubble for you for what you're doing. And so it's kind of why I asked that question, because I don't think everybody really understands what project management is for starters, and it's a vast subject, and the differences between all those different kind of should we call them titles? Probably the easiest thing to call them. Now, if I was leaving and I've got some of these things and I'm thinking, wow, do you know what? I was enjoying listening to Northrop Grumman and Rob there, something that I really fancy. Where would they come if they wanted to get in touch with you? Is the availability just to come straight to yourself? Could it link in with LinkedIn? What's the kind of different avenues open to them?
Sure, John. Yeah, well, I mean, so like, let's be honest. First and foremost, FTG. We're a partner, and the work that you, Mandy, and the team do is phenomenal. So, like, invest in the FTG. Listen to what the team have got to say. CVs are critically important. Because there could be. It's not for NG, but some companies get thousands, and they do use artificial intelligence to sift. So, targeted CVs are really important. But I think kind of as if you want to get in touch, LinkedIn, yeah, Northrop is all over LinkedIn, but we do have our careers page. If you Google Northrop Grumman UK careers, it will take you there. We have also got a veterans page on there, so people can. There is an email on there as well, and basically you can get in touch on there. We've got a veterans email, which John, I'll ping over to you, and you can attach. People can fire stuff in. The one thing I would say, and I know a lot of the guys and girls and others that are going to come through this sort of system, is what we are not as Northrop is a coaching service. I think John, if it's fair to say, that's where you and Mandy come in to help coach people in that transition. What we are not, and we must never be, is a coaching service, because we have to view every candidate as objectively as possible.
Yeah.
To give everyone a fair shot. So it's important that people kind of understand there will be a boundary. We would love there to not be, but at the same time, we as a company are after the right talent. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of Mandy's outputs at the minute, isn't it? She is starting to understand our businesses and of course your business, and that takes a little bit of time as well. And of course, when the quality talent, which there's plenty of, starts coming through, we can actually reduce that talent down for you to say, actually, this probably wouldn't be good for you, but this company would. Or actually, Northrop Grumman is perfect for you. And then when we're sending it through, there's less of the hassle for you to sift that out. And we get told all the time that there's no such thing as applicant tracking software, AI. Well, probably is. You've just said it. And the other thing is the CVs are no longer needed. Well, I would argue if a company like yourself is seeing lots of CVs and it's something that you're getting a lot of your top candidates from, then CVs are absolutely still out there and should be one of the two main priorities of a service leaver: brand, CV. Get them things right, and you start to move forward and understand who you are very quickly.
And I think, John, just to add to that, like me, I had 7 CVs when I was leaving, each one tailored very specifically. I don't get me wrong, I had a generic, like, hey, I'm Rob Atchinson, I've lived in Army land. But then I also had a much more focused, like, I mean, I can say it on here. I went for a job at Amazon to do something very specific. And the CV, I literally went through the job spec that they had online, and I went through and made sure that my CV identified, evidenced, and then explained in 1 or 2 sentences, and just did it. And don't get me wrong, it's hard work. It can be pretty emotional because you
Yeah,
think, why am I doing it? But I can't say or highlight how strong the effect of that background work is. You know, it's like all of us. We went into the recruiting office, right? We put on our glad rags and we're like, "Yes, sir, I'm really scared," type thing. And it's we are not that, but what we are is you know, we need people to do that background, sell themselves properly. And again, that's where I've seen the before and after that you and Mandy have worked with some of the gang on, and it's great. It makes our lives easier selfishly, but it also helps people understand how valuable they are as as a
yeah,
resource and as a human.
yeah. Good quality targets every single time. We also have a big pitch on the way it looks is also, some at some point somebody is going to view it. If it looks great, the perception immediately is this CV could absolutely be a great candidate. If it looks terrible, then maybe the candidate ain't so great. So we're working a lot on that as well.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. It's like any of our battlefield skills back in the day. It's an evolution. We learn, we adapt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not a I've done my CV, it's done. It's kind of a continually evolving thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's a full-time job in itself, is the quote I get a lot.
Yeah, yeah,
And just to finish, a little bit of and I don't expect you to give exact numbers and things like this on here, but people are always going to say, well, what locations would I be working in, and what kind of salaries would I be looking for, or accepting, negotiating? Now, clearly, salaries are personal, so you're not going to say a project manager would get 45 because there might be someone on 60. But what is
yeah.
the kind of arenas to do with salaries that you could probably give, ranges, I guess, and also what kind of locations are we looking at?
Yeah, so I'll skim the locations first. So we've got two offices in London. One sort of more central, one slightly more outskirts. And then we've got an office in Cheltenham. We've got an office in Chester. We've got a small office down in Langley near Gatwick, which does some aviation stuff. And then we have a couple of other sort of smaller satellite sites. One in Manchester, for example,
Okay.
which is a kind of it's a growing area for us.
Mhm.
So yeah, they're kind of the main bits. And I think in terms of salary, the one thing we as Northrop Grumman do is on every job advert, pretty much, unless it's for a US national, because we do have some stuff where it has to be US. So that is what it is. Um, we put the bands on there.
Okay.
So for example, a junior project manager, you're probably looking between, I think off the top of my head, you're looking between sort of 50-55K as an example. That would probably be a what we would des designate a P grade. So
Okay.
each of our grades have a salary boundary. That being said, that if someone's genuine quality, then it's a conversation, right? Where if we really want you and you really want us, then we'll have a conversation.
Mhm.
But one thing I would say is it's really important to do your maths before you leave. Work out when you've got your mortgage, your council tax, your water, your lecky, all those things. What do you actually need to literally survive? And then, if your kids are going to get on the school bus, or do they need a private taxi because you live in the middle of nowhere? Do that maths so that when I turn around in an interview and say, "Hey John, how much do you need?" And then someone freezes and says, 25K, and I'm like, "No mate, come on, like where are we at?" And don't get me wrong, 25K is a ton of money, but one thing we want to do in that transition is make sure that people are transitioning out. And some people might have to take a knockdown for a couple of years. But the beauty of the commercial world is if you're a quality individual, which 99% of veterans are, if they find the right role, and companies will work with them to find that role internally as well. The increase in your salary and your bonus and other benefits it can be quite significant. And again, it's if you graft and you are who you are from the military, you do very well. And those leadership traits and those sort of work ethics are not always easy to come by in the commercial sector. So it do your maths definitely is important.
Yeah, well, we hear a lot about the good jobs that service people are doing within NG. Talking to Sophie this morning just about that. Um, just quickly picking up on locations. Are we talking on site? Are we talking remote, hybrid, or a mixture?
So it's a mixture. We do some. fairly sensitive work, which is on site, which people, standard stuff, if anyone works at the different classifications. We do a lot of hybrid. And the other thing that I would highlight is we do what's compressed working. So you work 9 days in 10. So, for example, every second Friday I have off to do life admin because, funnily enough, all the shops are open on a Friday, right? And during a weekday. So we do that, and that you don't have to do it, but that's an option. And then what it means is each day you work like an extra half an hour, which is no skin off anyone's nose because you just work a bit more during lunch, but you get that every other Friday off.
That's good.
Which I found is fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Rob, we'll leave it there because I think there's a lot of information for people to digest, and I'm sure they'll be in touch, and hopefully through the FTG first, and then we go through all of the kind of processes to get them in. But of course, well worth having a look at the job. So thank you so much for, first of all, for being a partner, for your support, because your support has been crucial in all of this. And really looking forward to the online shows and, of course, the next live show in which you are the main sponsor again. So fantastic. It's great to see you, my friend, and long may this last.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Yeah, take care of yourself and good luck to everyone. And yeah, FTG is a very valuable resource. So please sort of invest.
Much appreciated. Stay safe.
Cheers, mate.